2023. For 5 years, Ukrainian Association, Fintech Association, and Investment Association contribute to developing fintech market of Ukraine and fostering financial inclusion. One of the main projects of the Ukrainian Fintech Association activity is preparing Ukrainian catalog. Our partners are the USAID agency, the American people, the National Bank of Ukraine, International Financial Corporation IFC, in partnership with the State Secretariat for Economic Affairs, and Fund for Effective Governance of the UK government in Ukraine. Also, our partner is Visa System and Startup Fund. Before starting our event, I would like to inform you that the hotel we are currently located at has a shelter. I would like to ask you, if there is a narrate siren, please go to the shelter. And let's start our event. And I would like to give the floor to Rostislav Duk, Chairman of the Board of the Ukrainian Association of Fintech and Innovation Companies. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, everyone. In fact, the FinTech Catalog is a milestone event which marks the start of the development of the FinTech ecosystem in our country. And I'm glad that among our partners there is a USAID project, Mr. Bond, who believed that the fintech can be a separate industry from a banking sector, and as we can see, this industry is a driving force for digital transformation. We've mentioned raid alerts, but I hope we'll avoid them today. It will be better for those who attend the event online and offline. We will share the survey, but I hope that in future fintech will be a driving force for attracting investments for small and medium-sized enterprises, for reconstruction of Ukraine after victory. And of course, we are grateful to our defenders who are fighting on the battlefield and give us the opportunity to hold this event in Kyiv. And I hope that in the nearest future we'll be able to organize all the events offline and rebuild our economy. Thank you. Thank you, Rostislav, and I would like to give the floor to Robert Bond, the USAID representative who has 40 years of who's been working for 40 years in this area. He is a founder of 2 consulting companies specialized in commerce and finance. Please, the floor is yours.
It's really a pleasure to be here. We started this FinTech catalog with the association several years ago, and it's a real pleasure that has continued and is an important act of the association. I wanted to say that when you Google FinTech, you come up with an unuseful definition that it's finance, technology applied to finance. And then after that, you quickly go to references of artificial intelligence, payments, chatbots, blockchains, DeFi, and cryptocurrency. That doesn't tell you a whole lot about what it really means. I actually looked at the catalog in the survey before coming here, and in Ukraine, it appears that crypto is a minor player in the fintech industry here. While interest in crypto, I think, is high among the Ukrainian population, it's the main activity of only about 5% of the 250 fintech associations here. My friend Rostislav says that after the crypto winter comes the crypto spring. Looking at the United States, I say after the crypto winter comes the crypto ice age. I would not be surprised in the next 5 years that there are no crypto exchanges in the United States. But fintech in Ukraine is resilient, and I have no doubt that it will start focusing on new parts of the market, perhaps artificial intelligence, and the industry will continue to try to bring innovation and a customer-first approach to finance. Fintech needs to continue to build bridges to traditional finance in Ukraine because that is its primary market. It also needs to find new sources of finance to supplement friends and family. So I hope this guide will assist in that process and indeed accelerate beneficial relationships between fintech and Ukrainian banks and non-bank financial institutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bond. Дякуємо, шановним.
Thank you, dear speakers, for your welcoming remarks. And let's start the main part of our event, which is the presentation of the Ukrainian Fintech Catalog 2023. It's the unique product to promote Ukrainian fintech ecosystem. It gives the opportunity to get acquainted with Ukrainian fintech companies, to learn about their advantages and stories of success. The readers can also find out about the state of Ukrainian fintech, its main driving forces and prospects for future development. I give the floor to Rostislav Duke, chairman of the board of the Ukrainian Association of Fintech and Innovation Companies, to present the catalog. You will see the presentation in a few moments, and I would like to say a few words why we think that fintech will be a driving force for attracting investments after the victory. When everything started, the fintech industry was estimated at 30 million, and there was a fund who wanted to invest 100 million in Ukraine, and we didn't know where to invest if the whole industry was estimated at 30 million. So we've been holding surveys every year, and even despite all the difficulties such as COVID, etc., the fintech industry keeps growing, and and we believe that it will continue growing even despite the difficult environment during the war, and we've seen that even during the year of the war, we've attracted more investment companies than for the year before. So let's look at how Ukrainian fintech looks during the war. I'll say a few words about the methodology. It was an online survey during January-March 2023. Then we verified the results of the analytics, and we will see the results provided by the respondents. Fintech is 246 companies on the market. They decided to start their businesses. Ukrainian fintech is a profitable industry, even despite the fact that in the whole world it has losses, but in Ukraine it's profitable. 77% of companies allocated in Kyiv. Now it's less because before it was 80%. And the two next figures, 17% of all the companies have female founders, and you can applaud here because this share in Europe is less, and we are convinced that Ukrainian women are very prone to business, and they will help us to increase these numbers. And 55% of fintech representatives are defending our country in the armed forces of Ukraine and give us the opportunity to develop financial front. And please, let's continue. Regulation. When we started, we said that the only problem of Ukrainian fintech industry is the law which Ukraine had at the moment of Soviet Union debacle, and thanks to the proactive position of the National Bank and the civil society, we've seen increasing number of regulations. This industry becomes more regulated, and even the war isn't an obstacle. And finally, the financial sector can use cloud technologies for its infrastructure, and we saw that civil digital infrastructure during the war was something the industry and the country and the citizens could use when it was difficult for them. Um, the law of Ukraine on payment services came into force and created benefits for Ukraine. As to the regulatory sandbox, we think that it's a great beginning and it will allow to develop innovations in Ukraine. And today we will also present another draft law on will be presented, and it will allow to implement digital assets in Ukraine, virtual assets. And I invite all of the investors in Ukraine. We will have a legal framework for the activities. As I know, American fintechs now are currently learning how to work with the state if it's not developing the market. So we've compared the year 2021 and 2023, and we saw that the companies decrease this launches of new ideas, new projects. We are glad that they launch new project, and Ukrainian Fintech is operating at the level of 80% to the pre-war level. As I already mentioned, 68% of the companies passed the break-even point, and 50% of the whole industry is small companies. And when we organized seminars in different education institutions, we are saying that everyone has a chance, even when there are very few employees, but they can use innovation technologies for their businesses. The geography of the fintech transformed because of the war. Before, the big cities were home to the biggest number of fintech companies, and now 77% of companies stayed in Kiev, and other companies were relocated to the west of Ukraine, and 5% of fintech companies are located exclusively abroad, but they say that they are Ukrainian companies working in the fintech areas. So we are proud that Ukrainian fintech companies continue their operation, but on the other side, we would like to bring them back so that they pay taxes and develop the business. As to the investment attraction, fintech is a quite young industry, and the companies were mostly funded for the funds of friends and family. And we can see the sources of financing here on the slide. And when we asked what funds are going to use in this year, we saw that 27% of surveyed fintech companies plan to enter into a partnership with a strategic investor from abroad. 20% will continue their development for their own funds, and a new instrument, 9% of companies plan to attract donor funds, and 1% said that they are already doing it. When we compare it to the structure of the fintech catalog, we saw that the leader is technology and infrastructure, payments, and the amount of marketplaces increased and neotech companies. It was a reaction to the new regulations adopted by the state. As to the international market, the war is unfortunately a great accelerator for international development. 33% are already in the international market, 15% see their development in the internal market, but I think it's temporary because our products are competitive on the international market, and 52% are planning to start their operation on international market. 49% of fintech companies named Ukraine as their key market, and 12% are already operating in Europe, 9% in the US market. When we asked what technologies or tools are going to be used in this year, 79% of fintech companies indicated artificial intelligence as one of the most promising technologies for the Ukrainian market. And we know that many fintech companies and banks, including state banks, are using artificial intelligence. One of the main technologies is API, cloud services, which is in line with what is going on in the legal area. Chatbot technologies allows to replace human in digital channels, and it also allows very powerful digital infrastructure. How the war influenced Ukrainian fintech industry? As I said, 70% of companies renewed their operation. 96% of companies continued their operations in Ukraine, even though they launched sales offices in other countries, and 33% of companies face difficulties while starting their operations on international markets, and we would like to help them through partnerships that we launched for our members. That's the map of the Ukrainian fintech ecosystem as of 2023, and you can use these QR codes to download the Ukrainian and the English versions. And our online participants will be able to get the online version of this catalog after the end of the presentation, which will be used to promote Ukrainian companies within our partnerships. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rostislav, for your presentation, and we are going on. For over a year, the financial system of Ukraine has been successfully overcoming the challenging that the full-scale invasion has put before us, but we have a no less complicated time facing us, the recovery of the financial system and the infrastructure of Ukraine. And fintech is an industry whose price has grown most in Ukraine, 50% growth over the last years, should become the most powerful locomotive and driver to attract investments into Ukraine. So what will experts have to say about that? That's what we are going to find out. In the panel discussion about the role of fintech on the involvement of international investments into Ukraine, we have Zarina Dinaeva, the chief of the programs for Central Europe and Asian countries in terms of digital technologies. She's the chief of this project, and this program is aimed at alleviating and helping the development of the digital technologies, opening up markets for available players and new players who have some new innovative, challenging technologies to offer, and allowing you an access to enjoy financial services. Anton Chuchun, Deputy Chair of Ashad Bank. He has more than 20 years in banking technologies experience and business experience. His achievements have been many times awarded by being nominated as the best head of in the banking sector and different kinds of sales points. Andrei Poderogin, a representative of NBU, for over 30 years he has been engaged in the Ukrainian banking sector, and he knows the payment sector perfectly, and all of his operational activity is connected with payments, card products in the chains of big banks. Taras Kirichenko, a financier, banker, a member of the supervisory board of a group of companies called Nova Poshta, New Postal Office. He is the chief in the banking and financial sector. He has more than 20 years of experience in managing and developing Ukrainian international businesses, bringing them to the level of leaders. Igor Kobzar, a specialist in financial sector from the USAID activities. He has more than 10 years of experience in financial and investment sectors and in IT. In his post, Igor is responsible for the development of digital finance, and he promotes different solutions for legal and physical entities. He tries to promote the development of fintech startups in Ukraine and also works on improving the legislative playing field in Ukraine. And of course, it's going to be moderated by Rostislav Dyuk, the chair of fintech innovation companies and financial sector companies here in Ukraine. You're welcome to come up here on the stage. You can hear us all right? While some people offline and others are online, we will get our discussion underway. We're still waiting for Taras because he's stuck somewhere in a traffic jam. Fintech is a driver in terms of attracting investment to Ukrainian economy. We see that the industry, despite its size in terms of GDP, is averagely small, but once again, the dynamics in terms of the forecast seems to be the most aggressive. Sometimes it even takes over some of the other industries in the pace of their development. So we would like to get this discussion underway by asking the question, so fintech, is this an investment tool, or is this something that it needs to be invested in the first place when investments get attracted to Ukraine? So Andrei, because you are here a representative of a regulator, what do you have to say? Just like you have demonstrated legal basis for the development of fintech. So once again, we are not the only one in this respect. This is joint work of multiple branches of power, regulators, at least from my perspective. And the way I see it, fintech is the object for investment. Here, all of the regulators, the task for the regulators is to create conditions, environment, legal ones in particular, to make sure that fintech can develop freely in the market. As of now, Ukraine has achieved multiple successes in implementing the second payment directive. Open banking, the law on payment services, has come into effect, and it has laid foundation and opportunities, has given the window opportunity, and now we are working under these terms. We have slightly dragged our feet in Ukraine in terms of perhaps not implementation, but adoption and bringing into action the law on virtual assets. While it was being finalized, some additional regulation has appeared in Europe, MiCA, and right now our counterparts and colleagues are working on that, and some amendments are being prepared. This is something which is part of the fintech companies are very much looking forward to, particularly the ones that are busy working with virtual assets and dream to come back to Ukraine and operate in our legal area and our jurisdiction. So from my perspective, regulators ensure conditions for this common and shared work with the players in the market to make sure that fintech becomes the object for investments and for it to become a tool to attract investments into Ukraine. This takes a lot of common work with the players in the market, with fintech companies in particular, because investors provide their money not for deregulation, but for interesting, fascinating projects, the ones that are filled with innovations, something that they're ready to provide their financial backup for. So for fintech to become a tool for investments, it takes creativity, ideation, novelties from the participants in fintech industry. Only then will it become an instrument to attract investments in Ukraine. Thank you. Igor, then the question, the same one goes to you, because you are a representative of a project to promote the development of the financial sector on behalf of USAID. So what's your perspective on fintech? Is this an object for investment, or is it a tool to attract investments in Ukraine? I think it's pretty easy to answer this question, because these are not mutually exceptional things, because fintech is both an object to attract investments and a tool to attract money and funding into the Ukrainian economy. Rostislav, could you kindly remind me how much Ukrainian fintech startups were able to attract in the economy of Ukraine back in 2022, the evaluation? Is more than 1 billion, from 1 to 1.5 billion. And we say that the Ukrainian fintech doesn't have its unicorns yet, although there are some startups and they're assessed to 1 million already. But the industry itself has become a unicorn, and it is valued at 1 billion. And the majority of the companies stay here to operate in Ukraine during the wartime. So we are fully expecting that after the war, in the first wavelength, we're going to have some first unicorns in this area. And in terms of attractive investment, I think it's tens and dozens of billion. On the eve of our discussion on one of the platforms, I saw the volume of investment attraction into fintech globally. It's about $79 billion over the last year alone. So I think it's all possible. It's possible to attract large investments into fintech. So fintech is definitely an object of investment making. And the international example bears witness to the fact that it can also become a fantastic tool to attract investments into economy if you develop crowdfunding products, if you invest in real estate, invest into capital markets. And then fintech, in essence, turns itself into a tool that can enrich economy. Also, indirectly, fintech bears its own influence on online automatic systems like anti-money laundering, systems that identify fraud detection systems, and it has also a very positive effect on the economy, financial sectors of the respective countries overall. There is also another interesting example of how fintech can exercise a positive influence in terms of attractive investments. The product that we have, fuel financing in Ukraine, we have it. It helps startups to introduce their financial backup, and if startups are competent in terms of managing their finance, then it's much easier for them to attract additional investments. So for fintech companies to attract great investments for their operations. Super, thank you very much. Also online we have two participants of our panel discussion. Anton, the floor goes to you. You are the representative of one of the most dynamically developing state-owned banks, and the processes that you have already passed in digital transformation, given the reference points, the starting points that you had to start with. So in its dynamics, is fintech a tool to attract investments, or do you see that fintech is potentially an object for investments? Thank you very much indeed for your compliment. Yes, we had a thorny way to overcome in terms of digitalization and applying different digital tools, because the legacy that we inherited was really powerful and hefty, and all of that had to be rehauled. Regarding your question, it seems to me that we've lost connection. It's a tool to attract investments into a country's economy. I believe that investments in banking is not that a complicated thing. These are hundreds of millions, billions perhaps, and even more. This is all about regulation, about certain requirements brought forward to capital and many other things. However, fintech, it's much easier in terms of entry. I mean, apart from the financial component, but in the contemporary world, we have a lot of money available. The main idea is all about the idea and the management of this idea. That's why I guess it is fintech that can become this driving locomotive, the driver that will bring a lot of investments to Ukraine, and then it will be also utilized by banks and the whole financial industry that creates their own fintech services around that and brings this to the end users. So I truly believe that time is coming, indeed, that for our Ukrainian startups and the fintech industry in Ukraine to be able to utilize the significant potential due to serious competencies, the innovation markets that we create and operate in, some of the really advanced personnel that we have to operate. So we have substantial opportunities to attract big investments. Thank you, Zarina. And then the question goes to you. The World Bank works in multiple jurisdictions. In this one in particular, you have been able to witness the impact of the investments in order to recover the economies after war conflicts and wars in the respective countries. So do you think in Ukraine, fintech is this a tool or an object for investment, where the first investments will come after we gain our victory?
Thank you for the question. And actually, I would partially agree with Mr. Titun that for now in Ukraine, you see that the fintech is the tool for attracting the investments. Why? I will explain. Because it's not always the case for the different economies. Fintechs, they're having the different stage of growth, starting from the startup, like the previous colleague also told, and like going through all this life cycle, the fintechs aim to become the unicorns, yes? And only at the stage of Series B, plus, the fintech companies are becoming the interesting object for the investment. Before, there are like different approaches, but probably now, especially considering the context of Ukraine, the fintechs are more tool for the investments. You also asked about the role of fintechs in attracting the investments into Ukraine economy for the post-war recovery. The role is significant, but it depends on the range of the products which fintechs are capable and eligible to deliver. Because the post-war economy recovery have the very specific needs to recover the infrastructure, the housing sector, the industrial sector, first of all, yes. And here, maybe the role of fintechs is not so significant, but it depends on the type of the products which they can deliver to their B2B, I would say, customer group. Yes, not B2C, because their role in B2C is mostly in delivering the financial services, while in B2B solutions, they can serve, for example, for the purposes of e-factoring operations, provide the special solutions for the supply chain digitalization. And in this case, the fintech will be able to play the impactful role in Ukraine economy recovery at exactly after the war stage. At later stages, definitely the role would be much more, I would say, significant and expanded. So this is the brief response.
Окей, дякую. І Тарас, вам слово. Ви як
Taras, the floor is yours as an observer of the supervisory board of the company who is attractive object for investments, foreign investments, but you also created a fintech tool for crowd investments in startups. It's a new form. And we see a great potential of this crowd investments as an element for attracting investments in a startup because of its flexibility and possibility to attract flexible investments. So is the fintech a tool or an object for investments? Thank you. Thank you for mentioning the Nova Posta. It's both. You know, like it's an old anecdote. It depends on what side you're in. You're either buying or selling. If you are a fintech startup, if you need money, if you need big investors to build up your business, of course you will attract funds as you can through different mediums of collective investments. So of course fintech can be an attractive business itself for investments. We are ready to invest in Ukrainian startups. Honestly, if your business is great, we will find money for you. It's only a matter of how good is your business. And for that, you have to look for your clients. You have to understand your growth rate, your track, your CAC, LTV, etc., and everything will be fine. For now, we invest several millions in a month because startups are good. So everything starts with the quality of your startup. If you have a great fintech, it's easy to invest in. On the other side, I think that we as finance experts, we have to make investments more affordable for people because unfortunately people keep a lot of cash in their houses and many things are not invested in. Let's take Wise, for example. If you have several hundreds of pounds or euros, you can invest in European economy, for example. It can happen thanks to the accessibility of fintech. That's why fintech can be used both for attracting investments or in your own company or economics of the country. Thank you. So you provide an additional instrument for investments. Let's talk about the obstacles that can emerge while implementing financial technologies and funds raising. We've been having a lot of discussions about the relicensing and adapting to new requirements. The National Bank launched a new survey on cybersecurity, whether the non-banking institutions are ready to the challenges for cybersecurity in terms of cybersecurity. Andrei, what do you think? What should the market do not to avoid the obstacles creation? I think that it would be better to listen to the members of this market, what they see as an obstacles. But we live in a war, which is both an obstacle and a bunch of opportunities for our companies. The obstacles are the risks, and any investor understands that investing in a country with high risks will impact the investments risk given in a good business idea. So it's an additional difficulty. Of course, there is a process of relicensing of payment services providers, but all the regulators of all the countries are currently using single approach, technology agnostic, same risk, same rules, which opens opportunities to start using new technologies, but it also creates new obligations, especially in a country at war. That's why we should understand the challenges that our country faces, how the tools are used, and therefore the requirements for the market players have been streamlined, and we achieved the continuation of fintech operations in Ukraine. As to the opportunities in our current situation, first, I think the companies whose clients are now abroad believed in their own capacities, because we are not ashamed of the level of services we managed to implement, even without the recently adopted laws. Second, popularizing our services among the potential audience in other countries. Third, we see the interest of other countries' regulators in how we ensure sustainability of financing system and sustainability of payment system. And we are now participating in many meetings. We exchange experience, and the main thing we underline is not the work of regulators or central banks. Yes, we are accelerators. We prepared the banking and non-banking sectors to protect the financing system of Ukraine, but it became possible thanks to the efforts of Ukrainians who are very hardworking, and they complement each other's efforts. They help regulators. So when we work within the central bank, it also promotes the fintech companies, fintech services providers, and will attract investments from abroad and from internal investors. So I hope for both, but working in Ukraine and staying member of Fintech Association. I completely agree, Igor. You are a representative of the project who works on financial sector reform. What challenges do you see, and what opportunities do you see for attracting investments in financial and technological sector? So let's think together. I see the main problem for the Ukrainian fintech startups as too small of an economy. We can't avoid this factor if you compare Ukrainian economy and the US economy. If you take their GDP, the size of the economy is like one store building and 100 store building. Well, Obviously, the size of the economy has an impact on the assessment of startups operating on the Ukrainian market, and we can only expect this market to grow, and we'll hope the increase of attractiveness for investors, and it only needs time, because when startups start operating in international markets, you face a question, a dilemma, whether you should start from the bigger market and spend your resource there, or start from the Ukrainian markets and get very few results. I saw Yaroslav today. Hello. He is one of founders of Ukrainian fintech startup, and before guys started operating in US fintech market, they didn't have great results, great achievements. So that's something which comes with an evolution, and we can only continue working to artificially keep our ecosystem operating. And unfortunately, because of objective reasons, Ukrainian banks cooperate with Ukrainian startups on a low level, and I think that startups can only improve the strengths of Ukrainian banks, but unfortunately, because of the war and the crisis, starting from the 2014, the banks were focused on different issues. They were thinking about how to preserve the business and how to operate at war. That's why, unfortunately, banks lack managing attention, or they don't have enough capacities to pay attention to the startups. Another challenge is regulatory requirements, which can be a destructive factor for the growth of startups, but unfortunately we can't avoid regulations, and the National Bank of Ukraine and any other regulator should choose between innovation and safety of fintech sector. And our fintech market should be stable, the inflation should be kept at low level. So to sum up, little economy, the banks should be more active in their work with startups, and we lack regulatory sandboxes, but it will be probably wrong to say, it's better to say ecosystems where startups can test their ideas and see how regulatory bodies can adapt to new business models. Igor, I can see that you haven't tried the fintech catalog. It's good because when you will read it, you will have a positive attitude to the fintech companies and all the trends. I don't agree with you. I think that the number of players in the economy and in terms of it, Ukraine has a great potential because there are all possible business models in Ukraine, and in our building there are 4 actors who work with fintech, and I hope we'll have more. So, Anton, I will give the floor to you. Please give some figures how the volumes of state banks increase, including in cooperation with fintech companies in through digital channels. I think there are no problems with banks. Our service so that 75% of banks learned how to work with fintech companies. They can they understand their future, which is not possible without fintech companies. Anton, I give you the floor. Maybe you'll share your own vision of obstacles and possibilities. Thank you very much. To be honest, I know all these aspects, legacy, compliance, regulations, and I think that there are no significant obstacles for development of fintech in Ukraine. When we compare our market with any European market, for example, many of our citizens are now abroad that could see how the system works abroad. They saw that it takes months to prove that you really can be delivered a bank card, and they can now compare and see that our market is very transparent and clear and understandable. The regulator improved the business models of the banks. Everyone can learn who's the owner. That's why I think we have a great legal framework. Of course, there are things to improve, but as of today, it is quite capable in terms of innovations. Our human capital is great, and any other country can only take us as an example in terms of human capital, and I think that nothing will become an obstacle to implement innovations in our great country. A minor obstacle might be the client experience, customer experience, because we follow the customer's demand in our services, and it took us a lot of time to teach elderly people to use digital channels. It's quite a difficult task, and at some point we understood that we should not do it, but we just have to follow the will of the elderly. If they want to use digital channels, okay, we should find a balance between the needs of different segments, and that's the secret of success of big companies who target their strategies to every customer segment. And finally, I would like to give an example from my own life. I'm currently in Khmelnytsk region, and I'm happy to see that one of our projects, tap-to-phone terminal, which we launched together with Visa company. It's hard to find in European market, but I saw it in a taxi in Khmelnytsk region. I also saw it in a university cafe. It's a local story in a local regional market, which prove that our possibilities are limitless. We just have to use it. And the only thing we really need is victory, and then I think there will be no obstacles at all. Thank you, Zarina. Question to you: which obstacles do you see, and which possibilities do you see for Ukrainian fintech market as an object for attracting investments in view of your international experience?
With Anton, because in general, on Ukrainian market, there is no policy level or infrastructural level constraints which prevent to attract the additional investments to the fintech market. But there are two aspects which clearly demonstrate that still we do not see the significant investments into fintech market of Ukraine. So you may agree, you may disagree with me, but we are now analyzing the 13 markets in Europe right now. And what we see that many markets are facing the same challenge as Ukrainian market has now. And the reason is not the war situation in Ukraine. The reason is the following. First, it's access to capital. Okay, let's take the academical knowledge. Yes, what is the life cycle of any investment in innovations? First, it's like the first stage, it's incubation. Yes, it's innovation and education. Then the new company needs pre-seed, seed type of investment. Then it goes to the early but more sustainable stage. Then after all these stages are passed and company still survived, it needs later stage growth. And then expansion, and then goes to IPO. And to all of these stages, you need a different type of capital, which can be invested into growing fintech business on the different stages of development. Taras told that the local venture funds, they are investing, especially to grow this startup incubation stage system. What is visible? Yes, first that mortality rate at that stage is extremely high. In general, it's approximately 80%. Maybe in Ukraine it's lower. But I would say that general trend is that incubation stage allows to survive only the most vital ideas, which are not so many. And if these ideas survived, they need the different type of investments, which are provided already by well-established venture capitalists. And I will name you the several names which are operating among the venture capitalists in European market. But maybe it's because I'm not involved in these dialogues, but Rostislav and colleagues, I will tell you the names. South Central Venture, 500 Startups Venture, Innova Venture, Early Bird, Smoke. So these are the largest venture capitalists which are ready to finance the fintech growth starting from the seed plus series up to Series B, because at Series B it's already not a huge problem to fundraise. Yes. And please tell me if you have these names in Ukraine. Rostislav, the question is to you.
Окей. Ну, насправді деякі з перелічених
In fact, some of the companies that you have just enumerated, these venture capital funds, in one way or another have attempted to enter Ukraine at some stage. And 500 startups, we have also heard, Smoke Venture, likewise, we have heard about it, it rings a bell. Maybe Taras can also add something. But in fact, the problem was of a different kind. There was no regulation field that would allow large venture field trust funds to come here and work the way that they're used to. Also lacking was the culture. The culture of investment making is growing year in and out. That's why I was alluding to the platform that Taras is launching on crowd investing, because it's also increasing the number of angels coming here, because angels are united in some kind of a club. So this format of a platform enables them to comply with the same set of rules. So ethics plays a significant role for the market. On the other hand, this requires from startups to learn to attract investments properly and also to be responsible and accountable for them. Yes, in Ukraine there was a problem in terms of attracting investments. We had not a very well-shaped market, but This desert rate in Ukraine for startups was very low, pretty low indeed, because they had their own money or the money that would still have to be paid back even if you failed. So this canceled the philosophy of the same American venture bank when you could borrow $1 million funds and you failed, and then you would come and say, I want 10 million because I have become 1 million more savvy. In Ukraine, this ecosystem made you go and pay back this million that you borrowed previously. So we shall see how it goes. We are an ecosystemic player and we have been doing a lot to attract investors in the economy of Ukraine. So we welcome and encourage any venture fund coming to Ukraine, any tools arising here. Time will show, but right now we are beginning to see that there is a great deal of interest in Ukraine. We know about 20 million euros allocated by the European Commission for the sake of the startup in the ecosystems. So the idea right now is to find the proper startups that will comply with this ecosystem and its requirements. And I would like to give the floor to Taras, the issue of barriers and opportunities and where to find all of these startups. So what are the criteria? What prevents these startups? What is in their ways? What do they have to learn so that there is a queue of venture funds from investment crowdsourcing companies willing to go and invest in them? Thank you. Regulators definitely is not a barrier or problem in this respect. I believe that Ukrainian regulation and Ukrainian regulators, despite war, have been doing everything to make sure that the industry keeps developing. We have arrived at this idea that the regulator is not at stake. The problem here is all about our mentality and the mentality of startuppers. Well, let's just look at it. I've just come here in a car that belongs to the Bolt system. It's an Estonian company, Bolt, established not so long ago by a guy who was just 18 years old at the time. Not everyone knows about the background. He came to Kiev. He saw a fantastic Ukrainian company, Uklon, you understand? And technologically it was much more savvy and technologically much more advanced, and he thought to himself, nothing to it, I can do the same. I don't want to give the name of this company, although the company is really good, so some Ukrainians chose for themselves a very narrow focus. They had been providing for the market and catering to it in a fantastic way. However, the Estonian said, the whole world is my market. How can I establish a bank? Like I have my own house in Korsun-Shevchenkivsky with 10,000 dwellers in it. How can you establish a Oshchad bank with corporate governance and all of the other systems for just a 1,000 strong population? So it's not cost effective. Therefore, you have to go to a broader markets. And every day I check up these startups, and the first mistakes that all of these guys commit, they say, first we want to achieve success in Ukraine, and only afterwards will we go to win the world. And this then or afterwards never comes, because their money runs out even before this afterwards comes. So the fact is that I have come here in a Bolt car means that you have to make an awesome good with a fantastic client experience and then come to sell it to Ukraine. There isn't a Ukrainian science, because science is universal. You can be a scientist or an academic and a Ukrainian, but we don't have to reinvent any theories in science. So trying to creating something like a Ukrainian atlas is something completely out of question, or reinventing the bicycle is stupid. So Ukrainian boys and girls, you can go ahead and attract money, and you can do so very easily at any stage, just like my peer has just said, if you have a solid, reliable product. However, if your product is not good enough, then another fellow speaker has just said that we have to artificially sustain the ecosystem, and I'm not sure that this artificial sustenance is the best way. Probably we have to teach startuppers to create more qualitative products, for them to understand their clientele better and make this product not for small towns like Korsun-Shevchenkivsky, where I come from, but focusing on the whole world. So capital is not at stake. Create fantastic products and companies, and money will come after you. You will opt for a big jurisdiction, but it doesn't mean that Ukrainians are in any way inferior to Estonians or Poles. And we have to enjoy the same products like Bolt or Uber. So we just come up with very fine products. Stop thinking that someone has to donate 20 or 200,000 to you. Just look for the answer why and how you can become the better. Be more entrepreneurial. If a young boy or girl wants to earn some money via setting up a business, don't try to become a constitutional court justice instead. Try to set up your own business, yes, and earn money via that channel. So let's just opt for the right pathways. But business is all about understanding your client base. So let's together help our people. So let's change this mindset together and say that, yeah, together with Ukraine, with Ukrainian R&D, with Ukrainian boys and girls, and I fully support Anton that we have awesome, solid, fantastic professionals working here to make some new innovative products so that people do not aim to create taxi companies meant for Kiev, but for the whole world. And then they will be able to earn not just hundreds of thousands, but billions. So this is the answer to you. It's clear. It's just on the table. It's better to follow the perspective of your clients. They will follow your products. This reminded me of an example when some 3 years before COVID time, we had brought an Israeli, we had come to Israel for an innovative conference, and we would bring some Ukrainian partners there. We had aligned very good connections with these businessmen. And the question was, what do you think about investment in the Ukrainian businesses? They say Israel is the country where 63% of companies outsource Ukrainians for their unicorns and setting up different startups, but we are not ready to invest in your startups. So it resonates very well with what you have just had. They cannot say more the names of the companies at a value more than 1 million. So the companies are very small, and they were not ready to go beyond this paradigm at the time. They said that in our association, everyone costs more than every single member is more than 10 million. So we established this communication. Yes, I agree. We have to change this paradigm. We have to change education, understanding, because education for a lot of time was just ready to prepare everyone to go and work in plants and factories. Now we don't have any plants or factories, so everyone wants to develop middle-sized and small businesses, but who will be responsible for that? We, in our association, in employment boards in many universities, we say cancel, abolish these diploma works. Because GPT can write this, can contribute. They will just copy. This is all about plagiarism. Creative people, they're so lazy. They don't want to do repetitive, monotonous, tedious work. They can come up with something creative like a breakthrough. Have them come up with a startup. And the most interesting thing is that CNEO is one of the academia where we have a fintech laboratory, and they decided to have this via startups after their internships in different world companies. So moreover, we came together, we sat together, put our heads together, and we said, see, we had even a greater, broader toolkit, and we couldn't come up with anything of the kind. How could they do that? And they said, well, they didn't have so much traction in the first place, so they had to go through these small cracks. So we have to join our efforts, put our heads together, and of course new solutions will come up. Time is running out, and I would like to ask you one philosophical question. What else needs to be done in addition to changing the mindset so that fintech can attract a greater amount of money, so that we can employ fintech to attract investment? So how can we double next year the valuation of the ecosystem? Do you have any recipes? Zarina, shall we start with you perhaps? What does it take for us as a country, as an ecosystem, to attract more money, more funding in order to double the value of our ecosystem? Please.
I think part of this question was already answered by Taras. This is exactly the reason why the foreign or like huge capital holders from the venture capitalists or private equity funds, they are not investing into some ecosystems because there is not enough scale and volume of super innovative and sustainable ideas. And Taras was absolutely right. And that's why I was asking you, Rostislav, do you know about these names of venture capitalists? They are operating, for example, in Balkans or in Georgia. And the reason is that they find a much more broader range of diversified and scalable ideas. And that's why they are coming to those markets. So what can be done is the following. From one hand, Taras also told that we should not lock the mindset of startups with the local market, with the Ukrainian markets, and this is absolutely right. So all startups need to think globally. In the meantime, we have the representatives of the National Bank of Ukraine. So National Bank is doing a lot to align the Ukrainian regulations and directives with the EU. But even more needs to be done because in this case, the startups, especially engaged in fintech services, they will be able to scale up their business across, for example, Europe without the additional business constraints and entry barriers, which is additional cost and complication and time consuming, and they do not have no money, no time to spend to overcome these constraints. That's why they feel themselves locked in Ukrainian market. And as soon as the regulatory environment will be aligned significantly with, for example, your requirements, it will eliminate the borders for such businesses to grow. So this is one of the aspects which is in the hands of the country authorities to address, and I think that National Bank is doing a great job in this regard. On another hand, you are saying about the education and the role of education in growing the startups and growing the absolutely new ideas. And this is absolutely right. Unfortunately, it cannot be done at private level. At least we did not see such examples in other countries. Usually it is done with the huge support of the government and with the significant support of the developmental partners like USAID, IFC, World Bank, BRD. This stage of growth is not so much commercially attractive. It requires significant investments from the private investors, yes? And I don't think that this is the role of private investors always to invest into education, yes? It should be the role of the state and the developmental partners. So that's why I completely agree. So it should be the robust and systemic system of growing the startups starting from the very first day of their settlement and leading them through this acceleration process till R&D stage and help them to grow. In this case, you will have significantly more startups at the initial stage. And you will have the bright stars among them. And so that's why I think that the role of the state here and the role of such companies like ours is extremely high.
Супер, дякую за відповідь.
Super, thank you very much for your answer. Thanks for everything that you are doing in this market. Then, Andriy, the question goes to you as the representative of the regulator. What are the steps? Maybe you can share. Recently, the National Bank has presented its strategy. So what steps are invested in this strategy to enable the market of financial technologies to develop and hopefully to double the valuation of the whole market? Let's dream on. Because unless we become dreamers, unless we had been dreamers and we're dreamers all this time, we would have failed long time ago. So let's keep dreaming. So what steps will enable us to achieve this dream? Well, of the nearest steps, most achievable, together with the market players, we will have to implement open banking. Because according to the law, it is envisaged that it will launch into operation with on the 1st of August next year. But we understand that we have to already lay ground to it now. And as of now, we are highly appreciative of the profile associations of members who have joined their efforts in fintech sector, banking sector, fintech banks, because open banking is a two-way street. It's about the integration of those who apply fintech and those who apply banking community services and rules, etc. So I do agree that banks in Ukraine are not a restriction nowadays for cooperation, and I would like to protect them, to say a word in protection about them. Our fintechs in Ukraine who endeavor to go into the Ukrainian markets have shared experience of collaborating with their foreign counterparts and complications in terms of achieving different services. So it's true, banks in this respect are together with us, with the fintechs, and we are in the same boat, trying to implement the market for fintech. So first of all, we'll have to make the setting of open banking and then even amending the legislation accordingly, so that even if we are ready earlier, we can launch the process of licensure and launch the whole operation on time. Also, we are trying to launch the regulation sandbox. Ambitious goals set before ourselves, given the war environment, and had to be corrected, but we will be launching a bit later. But I agree with Taras. Already we can see the first applications and submissions. There's no innovation element about that. 75 to 80%. This is submitting application in order to obtain some advice, consultations, rather than introduce new ideas that will require regulation changes, regulatory changes in order to make it into a reality. We're already seeing, according to some of the applications, the necessity to change some of the procedures of compliance to make sure that the work with applicants gets more flexible. We are going to adjust this. It's the second area of work for us. And number 3, for the next year, we are launching into operation the available payment systems and services of the central bank for greater for being able to forecast things better. SAP, starting with next year, the 1st of April, will be bringing forward a requirement concerning the guaranteed time of transaction processing. This will be an opportunity to build overlaid services on this basis, because studying the experience of other countries, we have launched a project of integrating into the European payment area, integrating into that, and we're working with other governmental institutions in terms of implementing all of the requirements in this respect and obligations, but without even expecting the full delivery on all of these obligations. We have started the technological stream to study the conditions for technological integration now. And we see the assignments set before us and obligations to ensure that the available payment systems in the market get comfortable for fintech's application. The next initiative is establishing instant payments in Ukraine. The working version that we have already worked through with the market players is on the basis of SAP, the National Bank of Ukraine platform. And given the fact that despite the war this year with the market players, we have already successfully implemented the transition to SAP 4. This is the platform where everyone communicates and integrates their payment system. So it opens up big opportunities for us. So remittances get cheaper and in real-time terms. So this is also laying foundation for the development of new services arising that fintech community will be able to set up and develop and realize them here in Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you. In fact, it's a separate philosophy, and I agree that there is a great potential. For me, Estonia has always been an example who established API around state services and created a market of 3 billion services that was non-existent before. So it's a small country that has great potential considering the volume of value chains, the size of their population. So it had effect, and I learned that I couldn't get a service after 4 p.m. I read the fraud from the National Bank, and we decided to check, and we paid as it worked indeed, and the bank didn't take a bigger fee, so it was great. I hope that we will become closer to instant payments, not only for everyone, but it was quick. Even before SEP4 was established, it worked even during the weekend. The only difference is now SEP4 is not sending the instant signals, and it's using the exact date. The initiative, we communicate all the time to the banking community, because as of now banks are the only members of these app initiatives, but we continue observing and assessing who may become members, who may join the system, and we understood that the accountant, your accountant has to be sure that he can submit a payment to the bank any time he wants. So the 1st of April was the day of implementation of SEP4 for Ukrainian banks, and the next year it will become a day when any payment will be credited to the account of any user at any time when the money is received. It will add it will help people be convinced that they receive their payments. Another challenge we will face will be related to the same principles of creating tariffs, and instant payments should become a new single norm. It should not be a value-added service, but a new norm. So that's our task as a regulator and as a proprietor of payment systems in Ukraine, to ensure the foundation which will be used by the open banking and API to create new services. Great. My accountant actually also asked me about the cryptocurrencies, but I think it's a topic of another discussion, because Ukraine has an opportunity today if we establish all the legal processes about how to work with cryptocurrencies, starting from the tax. It will allow us to become the next fintech gate to Europe. At some point, Lithuania was acting in this direction, and now Ukraine has a chance. And our colleagues say that they are waiting for the war to end so that your regulator open these opportunities and we come to Ukraine, and we will compensate the part of migrants like that. Igor, I would like to ask you how to double the cost of startups. You've seen it from both sides, so our path is interesting to us, and I would like to know your opinion how to support the fintech sector so that it attracts investments and is a tool. Double, you say? Yes, minimum, at minimum. So first of all, I will say that every citizen has to help the armed forces to win the war. It will help us to double, to triple, or multiply the cost of our fintech ecosystem. I will say a few things. I'd like also to know your opinion about these things. First, I think Ukrainian banks have great prospects in terms of cooperation with fintech startups. Fintech startups can offer the products that banks cannot create, or it's too expensive. In a foreign press, there was an article entitled Barbarians at Our Gates, where the author was speaking about the fact that startups deprive banks from business, but we see for the last 10 years, we can see that the banks haven't gone away. And I saw another article in another magazine that the empire strikes back. And it means that banks are indeed strong actors, and they start to use the army of barbarians who now fight for Rome. And it appears that startups only strengthen the strength of banks who have a wide network, who have a client base, who have cheap funding, while startup can build products very quickly. And I think banks could use this instrument as a future benefit, competitive advantage. And many banks in the United States and Europe say that fintech is coming after the banks, and the banks say that they are willing to connect to different platforms that give access to fintech products, and 3 out of 4 global banks, I'm speaking about such banks as Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, so they said they wanted to onboard 3 startups within the next 18 months. That's why I think Ukrainian banks could use international experience and cooperate with startups. I'm sure that it's a vast area for cooperation. Another thing, we were speaking about artificial sustaining of this ecosystem, and if someone asked me to name at least one investor, a pre-seed investor investing in Ukraine, probably only Rostislav knows the answer to this question. The first I will name Toloka pre-seed. Okay. Pre-seed usually invest 3F, family, friends, fools. It's pre-seed. So you take money from your friends, from your family members, and other people. Anodin. There is an invest fund, Anodin, which is dedicated to fintech. Then welcome to Loga. And there are representatives who are ready to, and we are helping to look through. But as Chalras mentioned, we have to correspond to the requirements of the league you want to play in. But N1 wants to invest in payment instruments, and maybe they will be less interested in lending, or maybe wealth management systems. But I will give the possibility to the colleagues to comment on this. I can see that the players on financial market, maybe even the project of financial international assistance, they can push these startups which are on early stages of development. They can help them because classical venture invest funds do not provide investments at initial stages. If you speak about the Estonia experience, they were lucky that at some point and they created Skype, then they sold it to Microsoft, and many startups appeared after that. The founders of Skype had many monies, a lot of monies they could invest later in the startup ecosystems, and let's hope that our unicorns will sell as good as it was in Estonia, and we will get more startups, including fintech startups. And third, I would like to ask Rostislav, is there anyone you know who wants to crowdfund a startup in Ukraine? How should a crowdfunding entrepreneur work in an environment where there is no regulation of the market? I think that a national bank if it has resource for it, it could work with it or help to regulate some business idea so that the business idea and the regulation would develop and supplement each other. Okay, many questions. I won't ask what you meant by saying barbarians, but let's speak about the bankers and then about crowdfunding. Recently, I had a discussion with bankers, and these are people who sell the product, which is money, and they are not having a competition with us. Fintech creates a product so that it is easier for bankers to sell money. So fintech is an tool, and bankers are about money, and we find synergy here when two smart industries meet and 1 + 1 equals 5, because they work in synergy. So I don't believe in a competition here, because those who compete finally come to get a banking license, and there is no point in it. So there are big players who don't want to get a banking license. They say that it's comfortable for them to stay fintech company, while for bankers, they can work on fintech technology, but they will lose their focus, and everyone has to keep a focus on something they can do the best. So I don't see a problem here, but let's listen to our colleagues later. As to the crowdfundings, there are 3 crowdfunding platforms in Ukraine. 2 of them are in operation, and we had a long discussion with the representatives of national banks, the colleagues of Mr. of Drink. Yes, we had unfortunately we don't have a representative of Ministry of Economy today, but is the National Bank is a regulator, and the Ministry of Economy has to order the regulation from a national bank, while the National Bank has to develop it. Because our discussions ended with a question, what do you lack? You have all the tools, you have a platform, do you need a separate law? Are we going to get a bigger number of entrepreneurs? I'm not sure. I think that Ministry of Economy has to think about different tools to attract money and investments in Ukraine, including technological ones. So we have to fully use the tool of factoring, which was this process was started but not brought to an end. The Ministry of Economy should understand how to mobilize funds from within among the population, because there are a lot of funds inside the country and how to realize them. Not everyone should participate. It should only be people who understand how the investment processes work. So I think this issue has to be discussed, and we are ready to be the platform for discussions. We were waiting for sandbergs, and we are now waiting for the water and to develop this tool to test crowdfunding in a wider sense. But I support the National Bank that someone should order it, but I never thought I would defend the National Bank, but I think it makes sense now, and we have to work with other stakeholders so that somebody orders it from the state. Anton, the question is to you: how do you cooperate, how the banks cooperate with the fintech companies, and what can be improved so that these relations become something better, so that they gain added value? How to improve the value of startup ecosystem?
I suppose this isn't even a question nowadays, like whether banks and fintechs have to cooperate. This delineation is getting blurry because we have NovaPay and the appearance and emergence of many other companies that are already operating at the level of banks. I agree that everyone has their competences to comply with, but I think it's a very fine line, and I don't see any point in discussing that. If a bank is large, because you see our banks, large banks in terms of capital, in comparison to fintechs, they're large, much larger, but worldwide it can be different. There are large capitalized fintechs capable of even purchasing a few banks, and very easily. At that, our story is slightly different. Everything began with banking and then FinBank. Fintechs occurred. So I don't see a distinction, just regulation perhaps. And the National Bank is working properly so that there is a level playing field for all of the entities in the market. What needs to be done for us to keep growing? Two short statements. I agree with Irina and with Yaroslav. Education, Zarina and Yaroslav. I do agree that education is at stake. It matters a lot. Our higher education is not the way that it should be. And unfortunately, it does not shape this entrepreneurial spirit and qualities, managerial qualities. There are numerous ideas, boundless ideas, but what needs to be done to bring them into order? This is an entirely different thing. So for us to achieve success, we require contemporary education that teaches one management not based on books of the Soviet legacy times, but contemporary modern management given all of the contemporary approaches, state-of-the-art things, and teaches one to think innovatively out of the box, proactively, and very much dream that we have to have a branch of Stanford or Harvard established in Ukraine. This would be a really powerful signal, and this would drastically change the whole map. Well, we shall see about that. Maybe something like this will occur in Ukraine after we gain our victory. Secondly, of course, we need to have our economy grow, because banks and fintech is just a reflection, mirroring of the things happening in the economy. If the economy is weak, there's no significant change taking place. Yaroslav, usually you come up with questions concerning a magic wand, if we had one. So what would we do with it? I would ask for someone to grow our GDP tenfold and for us to achieve at least the level of Poland in a year's time. And then I think there would be no impediments for our further growth in our way. However, if this science fiction scenario is aside, then the recovery of the country with the help of donors, respectable institutions like USAID, IBRD, and the like, I guess that we can make a really huge leap of faith in the post-war time after we win. and we will have very high attainments in terms of GDP. A lot of jobs will be created, and a lot of our students studying abroad will be coming back. And the overall professional workforce gets back to Ukraine. There will be a lot of employment opportunities, and then economy will have a substantial scope for growth. So all it takes is the victory and the conducive environment after that. Thank you very much for this very positive outlook on the future. Now, Taras, let's take it on to you. Let's put on the cap of startuppers on, because the whole market is looking up to Nova Poshta, Nova Pay, because it's so brave and it's a great deal of responsibility. We understand this is application to new rules, and perhaps you are going to be the first non-banking institution to launch emissions. It's a true breakthrough. It's a new level for fintechs that you're setting. What are perhaps some of the internal rules and secrets of growth, or principles that one needs to adhere to? Ambitions, understandably, education. What else would you add to what it takes in order to learn to grow twice a year? You see, the Lord has no hands except ours. All it takes is just to do your job well. Thank you very much for your compliments and for this meeting that you have set up. We need to organize more meetings like this. We have to explain it more frequently to entrepreneurs and their customers, clients, partners, that all of us are building together our jurisdiction for the sake of improving the life in Ukraine and on this planet. There are no secrets. All it takes is tending to your customers, do the job that you are supposed to do because of the fate that has come your way, and everything will be coming your way. So do we have any secrets to share as Nova Poshta? No, just do your work properly. This morning I bought a book in one of a bookstore, and I already obtained like a postal, I don't know, like a coupon based on the purchase of this book. So in our country it takes half a day, and here you have it. In other countries it'll take longer. So we have some things to say to the world, that we have fantastic, brilliant engineering brains in Ukraine. It's true. All we have to do is to raise the level of business education, the level of entrepreneurial activity, respect for entrepreneurs who make jobs, create technologies. We have to be conducive to them, and we do it to the best of our ability. I think that we need to meet with entrepreneurs more often and ask them, what else do you need, guys? The openness of the international banks, right? The sandbox we are talking about, it can truly pave way to the world for some large startups, integration into SAP and other institutions. These are huge steps. So let's increase the number of entrepreneurs, businessmen. Let's just drag them into your associations and explain and share with them that you mustn't create products for just a small district. Create products catering for the interests of the whole world. Don't create new bicycles because it's already in operation. Come up with something of global value. Keep repeating that. Demonstrate examples to them, just like you bring people to the Silicon Valley. This is what you have to do. This is all the secret. A couple of startups to the value of $1 billion, and then we will have powerful class of Ukrainian investors, and that's all that it takes. Super. Thank you. Thank you all the colleagues, both online and offline. I would like to thank my fellow panelists, the armed forces of Ukraine, who have enabled us to go about this panel discussion quietly without any air alerts. We wish you all to achieve victory. Everything will be fintech. Thank you very much indeed. That I hope you will be able to obtain your copy of the fintech catalog at the reception area if you're offline with us today. Online, you know what to do in order to achieve your copy of the fintech catalog online. Of course, we will also be disseminating this catalog through Ukrainian foreign missions worldwide, and we understand there is a lot of demand worldwide, and we understand that's a tool that can attract investments into fintech and with the help of fintech into the Ukrainian economy. Thank you. Thanks to the respectful panelists for this rich discussion. Let us remind you that according to this QR code, you can upload all of the results of the research. And just like Rostislav Duke said you can also have a copy of the printed version of the catalog at the reception area. We thank you very much for joining us today. Due to your support, we have the aspiration to keep moving and be inspired to do all it takes for the development of fintech. So see you next time at our events. And now we are inviting you to join the discussion of the fintech catalog while enjoying your coffee.